Yeah, so I think we'll make a start now. So yeah, so welcome back to our online Dublin Buddhist Centre. And I'm aware of the fact that some of you weren't able to be with us last week, so particular welcome to you if you weren't here last week. And yeah, so I'm Yanadara, and I'm going to be teaching the course for the 8 weeks. And we've also got a whole team of helpers. We've got a whole team of people who are leading the groups and so on. So yeah, so we're on the team. Also, Daniel is there, and he's doing the technical side of things. But anyway, so welcome to you if you're new, or welcome back if you're here for the second week. So what we're going to do this evening is, first of all, we're going to do some meditation, and then we're going to break into our home groups, and we're going to have a session where we're going to review our practice over the course of the last week. We're going to see how we got on, and then we'll have a 10-minute break. And then we're going to really get stuck into our theme for this week, which is mindfulness of the body, and we'll set up our home practice for this week. So that's basically the plan for the evening. And like I said, what we're going to do to begin with is we're just going to do a very simple meditation, a mindfulness of the body meditation. And one of the things I'm going to be emphasizing later on is the importance of, when you're aware of your body, it's not like you're looking at your body from outside of your body. It's more like you're feeling it from within. So we're looking for this experience where our body and the sensations and the experiences in our body are kind of saturated with awareness, are soaked with awareness. So it's more that we're feeling our body from within our body rather than looking at it from outside of our body. So that's quite important, that we have this kind of integrated whole experience of what it is that we're paying attention to, which in this meditation will be the body and the sensations of the body. So what we'll do is we'll pay attention to the different parts of our body. And again, what you'll find probably is that some parts of your body will be quite bright, and some parts of your body will be a bit dull. You might not be able to feel some parts. So don't worry about that. Just notice that there's nothing much there to feel. Notice that there's an absence, as it were. And that's still noticing. That's still being aware. That's still being mindful. Yeah, so we'll just basically move through the different parts of our body, just noticing what's there, noticing how we feel. Remembering that if we get distracted, if you notice that you're not paying attention to your body anymore, then just start paying attention to your body again. That's really the basic instruction, that we're paying attention to our body, and if we notice that we're not doing that anymore, we start doing it again. What we'll do towards the end of the practice is we'll just pay attention to our breathing. Yeah, so we'll pay attention to the way that the breath moves in our body. Yeah, so if just set yourself up so that you're going to be comfortable for the next 20 minutes. What we'll do in subsequent weeks, probably next week or the week after, is we'll actually look at meditation posture and how to sit on the floor, if you want to sit on the floor for meditation. But just until then, we're just going to sit just as we are, and that's fine. So I'll just give you a moment to get yourselves ready, and then we'll start in a minute or two. So one of the things that we feel as more or less a constant is a sense of being somewhere, being in a particular place. So beginning the meditation by just having a sense of the place where you are, the room that you're sitting in, what's around you. So your immediate experience of being in a place, being in a particular part of space, with other objects, maybe with other people. You might also like to imagine that there are people with you in the room. So they're not physically there with you, but they're on this Zoom call. So there are other people around the country who are also meditating with us, actually in all quarters of the country, not just in Dublin. You might also already have a sense of what's going on in your mind by way of a particular emotional atmosphere or particular strands of thinking. And remembering that you're not trying to get into a special state, you're not trying to do something artificial, you're trying to meet whatever is there with awareness. So don't worry if you don't feel like you're in a fit state to meditate. Don't worry if you're a bit anxious or a bit tired or a bit irritated. Just start from that place. And in this meditation, we're simply going to pay attention to the different parts of our body, one after another. So beginning with the face. So starting with the forehead. And just having a sense of soaking the forehead with awareness. And as you do so, allowing it soften. Having an awareness of the eyes and allowing the eyes to rest back in their sockets. Also allowing the ears to just rest back into the skull. So we're moving away from the external senses and just having a sense of the body from inside. So maybe we can feel our nose and our nasal passages. Can you feel that? Can you feel the air moving in and out of your nose? Can you feel the lips, one to the other? And being aware of the mouth. I mean the inside of the mouth. So it's warm, it's wet, and there might be an echo of a flavour or flavours in your mouth. So just having a sense of your face and if there's any tension or gripping in the face, particularly in the forehead or in the jaw. Also have a sense of the scalp, so that skin and muscles spread over your skull and just allowing it to spread. And also having a sense of the inside of your skull. And then letting that awareness soak down into your neck and throat. And having an awareness of the sensations, the experiences in that part. And notice how you're holding your head. So the way in which your head is connected to your body through the neck. Sometimes subtle changes in the way that you're holding your head can improve your overall sense of stillness and well-being. And then feeling your way into the shoulders. Noticing if you are holding your arms up, your shoulders up in a way that you don't need to. So you can allow your shoulders to roll down your back, your chest to be open, your arms to be heavy by your sides. And letting awareness soak down into your right arm. So first of all in your upper arm, your elbow, your lower arm, your hand. So again, you know where your body is, you know where the parts of your body are. But what's the inner feel of it? What's the inner feel of your hand? What's the touch of the skin of your palm and your fingers on your leg like? How does it feel? What about the left arm? So the upper arm, the armpit, the elbow, the lower arm, the wrist, and the hand, left hand now. So having a sense of both of your arms as places, as points in space, but also as centers of sensation and experience. And being aware of the chest. Again, notice the way that you're holding your chest. Is it kind of collapsed in? Is it opened out? Skin touching clothing. The warmth of the armpit area, right and left. Shoulder blades and upper back. The ribs, side ribs, back ribs. The waist, the belly, the lower back. So notice what's going on the surface, where your skin is in contact with your clothing. And also notice what's going on within your upper body, so your breathing, all those soft organs within, and the way that they're influenced by your breathing. Maybe you can feel the tightness of your belt or waistband against your lower belly, your buttocks resting on your cushions, the genital region. So now getting just a sense of all of those different parts, all those parts of the body that we've been aware of so far. So the head, the neck, the arms and hands, the torso, upper torso, middle torso, lower torso, buttocks, the exterior and the interior. So already quite a bit of sensation taking place. Moving now down into the legs, the thighs, again skin and muscle and bone. The knees, what sensations in the knees, left and right? In the lower legs and in the feet. So really feeling your body resting on your chair, on the floor, whatever you're sitting on. So your body isn't just a sensation, it also has a sense of mass, a sense of weight, a sense of being a quantity of water and earth that's resting on the earth. And while most of our body is still, is not moving, our breathing is animating our body. There's a subtle movement going on all the time. Particularly in the abdomen and the belly, we can feel it moving. We can feel the breath, the influence of the breath moving in our body. And what's happening in your body as you breathe? What movement is taking place? Just resting your attention on that movement in your abdomen. Not worrying if your mind is elsewhere or keeps moving elsewhere. Just trying to be curious about your body. Can you feel the movement in and around the diaphragm around the base of the rib cage? What about in the ribs, the upper ribs, shoulders, maybe even the neck? There's a sense of movement. So just letting your breath come and go. I'm going to stop talking now, and you can just meditate without making an effort to meditate. So just sitting. And also just to remind you that we're doing all of our events at the DBC for free at the moment, including this course. And we're just basically throwing that completely open to everybody who wants to participate. However, we still have costs, so we'd really like to keep doing that. We'd really like to keep the Dharma free for everybody who wants to avail of it, to participate in the Sangha and so on. So just, yeah, really strongly invite you and encourage you to help that work by donating money to the centre, which you can either do by just giving a one-off donation, or even better by giving a monthly donation. So just to let you know that as well before we finish. Okay, folks, so yeah, we've got a few questions, so which is great. So first of all, first question is it acceptable to meditate lying down or always in a seated position? Just curious. So in terms of meditation, generally the advice is to sit up for meditation. And the reason for that is that your energy is more flowing and more open and more vibrant when you're sitting up, when you're upright. When you lie down, the tendency is to go to sleep. So it's really good for relaxing lying down. And meditation has got an element of letting go and relaxing, but you're also trying to enliven and sort of wake up when you meditate. So it's this wonderful combination meditation of both being really alert and deeply relaxed, and hopefully, ideally, deeply absorbed in what you're doing, whether that's paying attention to your body, or paying attention to your breath, or a number of other different objects of meditation. So yeah, so generally the advice is to sit up. The exception to that is if you've got a sore back, particularly, or other injuries in your body, which mean that it's not comfortable for you to sit up. So you're much better off lying down than sitting up and being in a lot of pain, because if you're in a lot of pain, it can be really, really difficult to meditate. So that's a sort of general rule of thumb, that you want to be upright to enliven the body and have that sense of being awake. Yeah. Interestingly, there's another question. Someone in the group was asking about falling asleep during every meditation sit. Mind racing off the question, not working at the moment, but falling asleep during every sit, including during your guided meditation. So yeah, that's something that can often happen. One of the things that you're working with meditation is, and actually just awareness and mindfulness practice generally, is kind of working with your energy. And at different times of the day, we have, our energy feels different. So one thing to be aware of is your energy levels during the different parts of the day. Some people have got a lot of energy in the morning. Other people have got more energy in the evening. A lot of people, for example, in the late afternoon find that they're very sleepy. So that's the first thing just to notice is to try and meditate when you've got a bit more energy. For example, if you meditate immediately after having a large meal, you'll probably find that you're a bit snoozy. The other advice is that if you are falling asleep is to simply open your eyes. So if you keep your eyes open, it kind of brightens up the mind. The sort of whole system in a way is sort of brightened up, wakened up. The other thing I'd say is to pay quite close attention to your posture. So if you start falling asleep, often the head will start to go, to nod. So you can both open your eyes, but also try and keep your body kind of upright without being tense, without kind of gripping or holding or tensing the body, but try and keep it open and upright. And that will help you feel, more awake. So the other thing to notice is just to notice about sleep. So sometimes if you get too little sleep, then when you meditate, somehow your body knows that it can take a rest and you fall asleep. Or you might be getting too much sleep, which can also make the mind kind of dozy. So one thing is added to that, I think there's two things that can happen if you start kind of feeling sleepy or you start nodding. One is that you're just tired, that you're physiologically just tired and you need some rest. The other one is that some part of you is resisting the practice. There does seem to be the reason awareness is difficult to cultivate, that mindfulness is difficult to practice, or one of the reasons is that part of us doesn't want to do it. We've got this kind of unregenerate, sort of animalistic aspect to our being as human beings, which in a way is not interested in growing, not interested in awareness, and just kind of resists. And sometimes that aspect of our character kind of gets the upper hand, and that's more difficult to work with. Sometimes you just need to be patient and just work with that tendency to nod off. Whatever's happening in meditation, part of the skill is to meet it with kindness, with a kind of friendliness and openness. So okay, right now I'm a bit sleepy, but it's still worth engaging with this. A little bit like as if you were, you had a friend who was going through a rough patch. You wouldn't just kind of ditch them. You'd sort of stick with them through that rough patch. And sometimes your meditation can be a little bit like that. You need to sort of stick with it through a rough patch because you're out of a sense of faithfulness. So that's just a little bit about sleepiness. There's another question about the time to meditate. So I mentioned a few things about energy. One thing I would say about, and I'll mention this again later because one of our practice things for this week will be meditating regularly. The key thing with meditation is to try and do it at the same time every day, to try and build it into your daily routine. That's the thing that will really make a difference in terms of whether you're able to sustain a practice and whether it really goes deep and whether it's really transformative. So it's just to get into the habit of doing it at the same time. So for that reason, generally it's better to meditate in the morning because I think on balance, it's easier to build a routine in the morning, much easier than in the evening. In the evening, often there's all kinds of things going on. And it's harder to get into a routine. You can be interrupted much more easily. But in the morning, it's much easier to get into a routine. So for that reason, I'd say that, on balance, the morning is probably the best time to meditate. It also sets you up for the day. The exception to that is not everybody is a morning person. I know I've got one friend who's been meditating. Actually, I'm going to be interviewing him on Friday, which I meant to mention. I'll mention that in a minute. But he's not a morning person. He really isn't a morning person, and he meditates in the evening. And he's very, very serious about meditation, but that's kind of his regular time to meditate. So I wouldn't want to be hard and fast about it. A lot of it's trial and error, but what I would say is you're really trying to do it at the same time every day and build it into a routine. I'll say a bit more about that later. So why is the body scan meditation done lying down? Well, that's one question from one person. I mean, it often is in sort of secular mindfulness circles done lying down, and that's just because when you lie down, you can completely let go of everything. So in a way, it's easier to relax because you can literally let go of every single muscle in your body. If you're sitting up, you can't do that because you'd fall over, obviously. So that it does have that advantage. I guess what I'm trying to say, I'm trying to advocate for is the benefits of sitting up and how that can you kind of lead to the sense of alertness. So it depends what you're trying to do when you meditate. So if you're really, really wound up, really, really tense, it can be worthwhile to lie down for a bit and just really relax the body really thoroughly and really deeply. There's a place for that. Yeah, hopefully that answers the question. Feeling lots of resistance to my meditation practice lately. Any suggestions? One suggestion, in a way it's a little bit difficult to answer because I'm not sure what the resistance is, but probably one thing I'd say is to really remember why you're doing it. To really try and, because sometimes if something's difficult, you need to remind yourself why you're doing it in order to bear with the difficulty. So to keep reminding yourself what the benefits are. Incidentally, that's why we have the image of the Buddha, this image behind me, in a way as a reminder of the benefits of meditation. You know, that the image represents a human being who is completely free from all afflicted states of mind. You know, he doesn't experience hatred or craving or confusion. There's just this clarity and awareness. So part of the reason for having that image is just, you know, to remind you as you're practicing why you're doing it. So that principle holds true even if, you know, you're not quite sure about the Buddha. You're not quite sure if you're a Buddhist or something, but you can still have a sense of the value of meditation and the benefits that it can bring. Another thing is just to meet whatever arises with kindness, sort of openness. Often we can go into a meditation with a kind of forceful attitude, which is, I want to get rid of this painful experience I'm having, which tends to make it worse. If we meet difficulty with aversion, it tends to make it worse. But if we're able to meet it with kindness, it's much more likely to be more genuinely transformative than meditation. So those are two things, to keep connecting with your inspiration for practice, and also to meet whatever arises with as much kindness as you're able to muster. How do you manage your stress response in an active social situation when you feel offended by others without losing control or reacting rudely or impatiently? Well, one of the answers to that is to meditate. So what happens when you meditate is you create more of a space between stimulus and response. So it's one of the really powerfully transformative things. We're going to look at this in more detail next week, how through developing awareness, we can in a way undo those reactive patterns that we get into where something happens that we don't like and we immediately react. It kind of stirs us up, it sort of triggers us. So awareness can kind of slow that process down, and eventually that process is, well, in a way it doesn't happen anymore. You don't react in that kind of way. So that's one thing. And also just, you know, I mean, there's a lot to be said actually for restraint. So this is an element of mindfulness as well, is it's not just about being aware in the moment. It's actually about being aware of how we're creating what happens in the future now. And that includes a sort of an ethical sensitivity. So a sensitivity to how we're interacting with other people and how we're creating that relationship into the future by the way that we're interacting. So developing awareness will help with that. Again, we'll look at that later on in the course more specifically, but I think that's one of the key things is sometimes what we need to do is just, well, you know, keep our mouth shut and take a few deep breaths before we respond. The same is true, I think, for responding. Particularly, I think it's important when responding to things on like in a text format, either through email or WhatsApp or Twitter, is to just take a sort of a break before we respond, particularly if we're kind of exercised or triggered by something. There's a lot more that could be said about that. So in a way, it's a really, really big question. We're going to learn a meditation later on in the course called Metta Bhavana, which is specifically about working with those triggers with people that do things that we don't like, or that offend us or make us angry or hurt us, and learning how to find more creative responses to those situations when they arise, because they will arise. they will arise for all of us. And I think for a mindfulness practice to be really effective and real, it has to, in a way, speak to those challenging situations that we find ourselves in. Because for most of us, the stressful things in life are going to be conflicts that we get into with other people. It's not just going to be about like the quantity of work that we have or the demands being made on us, but the particular tensions, interpersonal tensions that we might experience with our family or with our work colleagues or friends and so on. So what I'd say is we will look at that into more depth later on in the course, but hopefully that's enough for now. Oh yeah, someone's also saying, so part of the question about a time to meditate is finding time to meditate in a busy household. So that's a bit more of a tricky question, and it might mean that, and again, I'll say more about this later, it might mean that this week, actually having a conversation with the people that you live with, and just seeing if you can just say to them, look, I'm going to be meditating at this time. Maybe you could just leave me be. It's a tricky one, particularly these days, you know, if we're in a lockdown or semi-lockdown, that often you're kind of at home with a lot of people. And it's quite embarrassing if you get interrupted when you meditate, not just for you as a meditator, but for the person who interrupts you. It's weirdly kind of intimate. And it's hard to relax if you know that you're going to be interrupted. So yeah, that's another reason actually for meditating in the morning, that you might, if you can get up before everybody else, you're much less likely to be interrupted. But I know it's a difficult challenge. Ordinarily, what I'd say is you could come to the Buddhist Centre and meditate here, but at the moment we're not open yet. We're hoping to be open, but again, we've just entered this new situation in Dublin, as most of you are probably aware, where it's a bit difficult to open things up. Anyway, that's probably enough questions. So thanks for your questions. What I want to talk about this week is basically the second, this is the second week, and the focus for this week is mindfulness of the body. So I'll just remind you what we looked at last week. We looked at a definition of mindfulness. So mindfulness, basically, the easiest way, the simplest way of describing what it is that it's paying attention. And so what we're trying to do is actively, consciously pay attention to what's happening and paying attention in a particular way. So for example, in that meditation we did before the home groups there, we paid attention to different parts of our body and the experiences in the different parts of our body, including towards the end, our breathing and the different movements that arise and that take place when we breathe. And we also try and just be curious. I think that's a really important quality, just being curious about what's happening. And that can help, particularly if you're kind of a driven person, you want to get the benefit of the meditation immediately. That will come from sort of developing this curiosity where you're just paying attention to what's going on, simply for the sake of paying attention to what's going on. In a way, you're not trying to get anything out of it. And it's a subtle thing, this, but I think it's a really important aspect of developing awareness. In a way, you're just doing it for the sake of it, and then it will open out. If you're doing it because you want to get something out of it, and you know what you want to get, then it's less likely to kind of open out. It's more likely to become kind of closed. And the other thing, as I mentioned a minute ago, is the importance of just doing the practice with an attitude of kindness. So you're already doing this course because you want to benefit yourself, I'm sure. So why not do the practice in that kind of spirit? I'm doing something here that's going to benefit me. I'm being kind to myself, as it were, by doing it, and doing it in that kind of spirit. So that's really key with mindfulness, is those two qualities. We're paying attention and we're doing that in a curious way and in a kindly way. So another key thing about mindfulness is it's not just that we're kind of observing kind of from the outside. This is what I was saying earlier. We're trying to know and to feel what's happening. So this is the way the Buddha talks about it. He sort of says, well, you know, when you breathe in, you know that you breathe in. When you breathe out, you know that you breathe out. When you're walking, you know that you're walking. When you're standing, you know that you're standing. When you move your arm out to the side, you know you're moving your arm out to the side. So when we're being aware of our body, a big part of it is actually just being aware of what we're doing with our body. Because so often we're doing all sorts of things with our body, waving our arms around, scratching our face, and we don't know that we're doing it. Yeah, I mean, it's particularly noticeable at this. I keep noticing how much I play with my face because of this whole COVID situation. With all, I become much more aware of our bodies, which is probably, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'll say a bit more about that in a moment. But anyway, we are being made much more aware of our bodies. So the reason that we start with mindfulness of the body is because it's so fundamental to who and what we are. We need to know where we are, we need to know what we're doing, and the most basic aspect of what we are and what we're doing is what our body is doing, what we're doing with our body. It's like the easiest way into discovering who and what we are. Because like I said, that's really what we're trying to do, is just to know and to feel what's actually happening. So often we don't know, we just don't know what's going on. So yeah, so I mentioned earlier that that starts with just knowing where we are. So it's a bit like having a sense of our location. I was just reflecting that, you know, one of the first things that you normally get in a film or in a novel or any story is you get the location, you get the place where the story, where the narrative is taking place, is established right at the beginning. So you kind of know where you are, and then you can engage with the story. So I think it's a little bit like that with mindfulness. First of all, you just need to know where you are and what the environment is like, what the atmosphere is like, what the temperature is like. That's the most sort of basic experience we have of ourselves. And we always, I think, even in dreams, we have a sense of ourselves as being somewhere, being in a place. So being aware of the body kind of includes that, because it's not just an external thing, it's like an internal thing. We need to give a sense of what's going on in our physical experience. So of course, you know, that includes knowing, like I said a minute ago, whether we're walking, whether we're standing up, whether we're lying down, and knowing what we're doing with our body in terms of movement. So this is how we express who we are. I just did it there. Is we move, we do things with our body. You know, we make food, we wash, we dress. We move around our fingers to do messages and to write things on pieces of paper, and we move our mouth, we move our larynx, and that becomes, you know, the way that we interact with the world, the way that we communicate with other people. So that's the way we express ourselves. So, you know, we can connect with all those things by just noticing what we're doing with our body. And also the body is, like, you could say, the kind of container of our physical senses. So much of our experience of the world, we experience through our senses. So what we see, what we hear, what we smell and what we taste, and also what we feel with our skin. And that's all kind of contained within our body. Particularly, we experience smell, taste, and touch as deeply kind of embedded in our sense of being a physical entity. The ear and the eye sense, sight and hearing, is in a way a little bit more free floating, which hopefully we'll discover as we become a bit more aware. It's quite interesting when you really start paying attention to just the fact of seeing, the fact of hearing. So anyway, so we start with the body because it's just the most basic place to start. It's our most basic experience of the world. And we can begin the sort of exploration of all the more subtle aspects of ourselves from that base, from that starting point. So I want to introduce you to a little teaching of the Buddha, and it's the teaching of what are called the 4 Satipatthanas. So Satipatthana, Sati means mindfulness. It means memory and recollection. And Patthana means something like a sphere or it can even mean application. So the 4 Satipatthanas are the 4 things that we pay attention to with mindfulness. And it's a really, really fundamental Buddhist teaching. And I'll just bring it up on the screen here. So yeah, so the 4 Satipatthanas is what we're going to be looking at this week, next week, the week after, and the week after that. So for the next 4 weeks, we're going to be looking at this very central teaching of the Buddha, the 4 Satipatthanas. And what we're doing is we're starting off with this very basic fundamental experience of ourselves, and then we're becoming more and more subtle and more refined. So the first one is body. The second Satipatthana is feelings. So noticing that whenever we have an experience through one of the senses, it feels pleasant, it feels unpleasant, it feels neutral. And that's really significant, because if we know that, we're much less likely to react to whatever it is that we're experiencing. So somebody mentioned a minute ago, so, you know, being in a social situation and somebody saying something to us that we find offensive. And so that's painful. Yeah, so we have a painful feeling, and the tendency is to react to that with anger. Now, if we know that we're having a painful feeling, if we're aware that we're having a painful feeling, we're much less likely to react in that automatic kind of way. So that's part of what we're going to be exploring next week with feelings. Thirdly, there's the mind. So this is much more subtle. It's much, the Buddha explicitly says that. He says, you know, the mind is extremely difficult to grasp. Extremely difficult to grasp. It's subtle. But if we start with the body, if we start being aware of our feelings, we can begin to get a little bit more of a sense of what's going on in our mind, what's going on with this thing called mind. It's not that the body and the mind are separate, but they're like different aspects of this total experience that we have of ourselves. So we'll be exploring that. And then the 4th Satipatthana, it's a bit arguable what this is, but the interpretation that I'm going to take is that what the 4th Satipatthana is like a dharmic perspective. So it's like looking at what we're experiencing physically in terms of feeling and in terms of mind and emotion and impulse with a particular perspective in mind. Trying to see, you know, for example, when we notice, someone mentioned a minute ago that we're sleepy, what's happening there is we're basically understanding the kind of mind that we have, the kind of body that we have. And there's some more sophisticated analysis that we can do to help us to both recognize what's going on and also know how we can respond to that creatively to move things on, to develop, to grow, to become more aware and more deeply creative, responsive, and ultimately, you know, free of having our mental state determined by our environment. So those are the 4 Satipatthanas that we're going to be looking at over the next 4 weeks. So as I mentioned a minute ago, with this pandemic, we're much more aware of our bodies, I think. We're aware of our bodies in relation to other people's bodies. You know, when you walk down the street, you're just aware that other people are there in a way that maybe we weren't before. You go into a cafe, you're very aware of where everybody is. You're aware of people, you know, maybe if they sneeze. Also, you know, like I've been made aware of my body because I'm at home an awful lot more. I actually have to consciously make sure that I move. Otherwise, I just stay in my room, sitting at my computer, writing my emails and talking to people all day. So I'm more conscious of the fact that my body isn't just going to move itself if I, you know, walk into work or something. I need to actually, you know, go for a walk, make sure that, and more about that in a moment. It's not just going to happen of its own accord. I'm also, you know, washing one's hands, being aware of what one's touching, all of this stuff. I actually had I had a COVID. I was feeling a little bit poorly last week, and I thought I better go and get a test to make sure I haven't got COVID. Just because I wasn't terribly unwell, but I thought I might have it, and I obviously don't want to give it to anybody else. So I actually went and got a test, which is quite a bizarre experience. And weirdly, even though that was about my body, I did notice a certain kind of fear partly because the environment is really artificial, and also partly because there's a potentially fatal disease going around, which you can catch just by kind of breathing. There's a certain kind of fear, and actually, weirdly, what I noticed was almost a slight alienation from my physical experience. I kind of didn't want to fully feel what I was feeling physically. So this is one thing that we need to be aware of, is that we can develop this kind of alienated awareness. So it's like we're observing what's happening, but we're not experiencing what's happening. So what we're trying to cultivate with mindfulness of the body is a kind of integrated experience, an integrated awareness where we're both aware of what's happening and we're experiencing what's happening. We feel what's happening, we know what's happening, we're in what's happening. And I think alienation is quite an important thing to be aware of, because it's quite widespread, I think, in the world these days. And so part of it, I think, is there can be fear attached to the body. Particularly, we might have unhelpful conditioning about the way that we view the body, that it's inherently kind of, nasty or sinful or defiled. So if we got those kind of attitudes, particularly maybe attitudes around sex, that somehow the body's just this kind of dirty thing, then we might have fear around it, around our sense of our body. There can also, and like I say, there might be the fear of disease, of what, how the body can kind of betray us with catching diseases or giving diseases to somebody else. So that can lead to an alienation from the body. But also, I think part of the challenge is that a lot of us spend a lot of time looking into screens. And when you look into a screen for a lot, and probably a lot of us are looking into screens more than we normally would. I know a lot of us are working, Zoom calls, etc., for our work. It's easier to forget that the rest of your body exists, other than your eyes and your arms. So I think that's another reason why we can feel alienated. And we can start getting the sense that when we meditate, even, it's like we're looking at our experience from above, like we're shining like a flashlight or a torch onto ourselves from outside. I wanted to illustrate this, what this can be like, I wanted to read you a little bit it's a story by James Joyce, from the Dubliners, just a little excerpt. I'm not going to read the whole story. And it's about this character called Mr. James Duffy. Now, Mr. James Duffy lives in Chapel Lizard and takes the tram into work. He works in Bagot Street, I think it was, he's a bank teller in a private bank. And this is what Joyce says about this character, Mr. James Duffy. He lived at a little distance from his body, regarding his own acts with doubtful side glances. He had an odd autobiographical habit which led him to compose in his mind from time to time a short sentence about himself containing a subject in the third person and a predicate in the past tense. So it's a very vivid little, he lived a little distance from his body, a very kind of vivid description of what a kind of alienated state is like. And we might recognize that, how we can kind of get into that state ourselves. So mindfulness, genuine mindfulness, is a way of alleviating that condition of alienation, that we're really feeling what we feel, we know what we feel, we know what experience we're having. Yeah, and I think, sometimes I think what can happen is mindfulness, the language around mindfulness can almost exacerbate or make worse that feeling of alienation. I do wonder sometimes if even the word mindfulness can suggest something a little bit unhelpful. And I think it's something to do with the language itself. So when we hear the word, mindfulness has got the word mind in it. And very often when we hear the word mind, we think about our brain. So we think about what's going on in our head, our brain. And then we think, well, okay, our brain's about thinking. That's what we do, isn't it? We think in our brain and we feel in our heart. That's a kind of commonplace way that we think. So then we sort of assume unconsciously that being mindful of something must mean to think about it. So what can sometimes happen is that when someone invites us to be aware of our foot, we just think about our foot. So we think of an image of our foot, we think about what our foot does, we think about what our toenails look like, what socks we're wearing, but we don't actually pay attention to the immediate sensation that's going on in our foot. That's what we're really trying to do when we practice mindfulness, is we're trying to feel our way into what's happening. So yeah, so that word mindfulness can somehow, I mean, it's fine, it's a great word, but it can sometimes suggest something which is a little bit unhelpful. So yeah, so like I was saying, when you're trying to know what you're doing, feel what you're doing, it's a little bit like taste. Like if someone says just be aware of drinking a cup of tea, you don't have to think about that to taste the tea, you just know what it's like. So we're trying to kind of taste, just feel our experience our body more and more deeply, and bring about what you could call a kind of integrated awareness, which is an awareness of ourselves while at the same time actually experiencing ourselves. You're in the experience that you're having. Your experience is kind of saturated with awareness. So ideally what happens is when we develop awareness, we develop this deep kind of absorption, this deep kind of flow, where we're just really engrossed in what it is that we're doing. We're wholly, fully present. And this kind of togetherness, this wholeness, this integration is really what we're trying to achieve through mindfulness practice. So hopefully you'll start getting a taste of that as the weeks go on, the sense of being much more together, much more whole, much more kind of engrossed in what you're doing. So in order to achieve that, we are going to do a bit of practice. So last week, we kind of set up the conditions for a life with a bit more space in it, a life that kind of conduces to mindfulness. There's a kind of an atmosphere of mindfulness. So the first thing is, for this week, the first home practice item is to do a mindful walk. Yeah, so what that means is to think of it. Now, ordinarily, what I'd say is think of a walk you do every day. So assuming that most people are going to be commuting in some kind of a way, or they might be picking the kids up from school, or they might be going down to the local shop, they might be going to the bus. I'm aware of the fact that, you might not be doing that in quite the same way. Like I said a minute ago, I've actually had to start quite consciously going for a walk during the afternoon. Otherwise, I can stay at home all day, which is not good for not good for me. Probably not good for most people, but just to stay inside all day, particularly on a day like today, it's not good. So I've had to consciously, make sure I leave the house by going for a walk. And what we're doing in this practice of a mindful walk is we're just bringing awareness to our walk, and we're not going to walk in a special way. It's not quite walking meditation. That's something different. That's a much more conscious and direct way of developing awareness through walking. So ideally, it's a walk that you already do, but you might need to actually start taking a walk, and that'd probably be no bad thing. And what you want is a walk that's no longer than 20 minutes and no less than 5 minutes. So, I've got a little walk that I do. I know it takes about 20 minutes, so I do a little walk around the canal and back to my house. So, yeah, if it's longer than 20 minutes, it's a bit hard to sustain the mindfulness. So you want to make it sort of something that's kind of manageable. And so that's what you're going to try and do this week, is to take a walk every day for between 5 and 20 minutes. And again, it'll really help if you can do that at a particular time. So I've been trying to take a walk about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That seems to work quite well for me. It might be, like I say, if you commute, that you might spend a little bit of time being mindful as you're walking to where you're going. If you drive, what you might do is you could park a little bit further away from your destination so you can have a bit of a walk. It's really, really good if you can build it into a routine that you already have. So it's whenever you're building a new routine, whether it's walking mindfully or whether it's meditation, it's always really helpful to sort of attach it to something that you already do. Which might be getting out of bed. So you get out of bed, you splash water on your face and you meditate, for example. So you might like to just think in your own mind, if you've got your walk, or what might there be some obstacles to that walk. So you might, you might meet somebody that you you often end up chatting to. By the way, it's quite a good idea to work to see if you can walk on your own. If you're with somebody else, you'll probably pay attention to them quite naturally. It's much more difficult to walk mindfully with somebody else because you tend to give your own attention to them, which is not a bad thing, but it's just not quite what we're trying to do. Yeah, try and be specific about where you're gonna walk, for how long, and yeah, like I say, just see if there's going to be any issues or problems in terms of the route that you take, or maybe you need to troubleshoot. For example, if you don't walk at all, if you use a wheelchair, there might be other issues that you need to think about. But it's basically you move your body in a particular way for that period each day. And this walk is going to be something that we're going to be doing every week, and we're going to be doing it in a slightly different way. We're going to be taking different approaches to it. So it's quite central to the course. So it's quite good to just establish a good pattern right from the beginning. So yeah, I'll just stop talking now for a little while. Maybe I should just check and see if there's any questions. Is that clear what I'm asking? What I'm encouraging you to do? If you've got a question, maybe you could put it in the chat box. Okay, so hopefully that's clear enough. So what I'll do is I'll just stop talking for 2 or 3 minutes, and I'll just give you an opportunity just to think yourself, like what that walk might consist of. So just imagining yourself actually doing it, particularly what time you're going to do it, and where exactly you're going to go.
Wait for Kieran to get back to it.
Oh, someone's got a question. What exactly we have to do while walking? Basically, what you're going to do, that's a really good question. I didn't say that. What you're going to try and do when you're walking is pay attention to what happens when you walk. Yeah. So just basically, you're walking. So rather than thinking about what you're going to do when you get to work, rather than thinking about what your boyfriend or girlfriend or partner or mother said to you this morning, not thinking, not just sort of daydreaming, but trying to actually pay attention to the physical experience of walking, particularly the way your body moves, the wind on your face, just paying attention to the immediate, direct physical experience of walking. That's what you're trying to do with this practice. Yeah, thank you for asking that. That's really important. Yeah, someone's saying, I presume walking your dog isn't ideal. It's probably not ideal, but if that's the walk you already do, then, that would be better than trying to put something new into your day. Part of the purpose for this, of doing this, is because ideally what happens with, and I mentioned this last week, is that it's not so much about doing new things, but doing the things you already do, but in a different way. So ideally what happens is you've already got a walk that you do, and you can just do that walk, but do it in a different way. Like for example, not listen to your iPod or your phone or whatever, but just like consciously and deliberately. And if someone's asking, if it takes me 30 minutes to walk to work in the morning, should I time 20 minutes or just pick a place on the way and try to be mindful until then? You could do either, actually. Either would be a good strategy. You could set a timer on your phone, or you could just say, I'll try and be mindful until I get to Dunleary Pier or wherever it happens to be. And then you might find that you'll naturally want to be mindful after that anyway, but you're not going to, it's a little bit like just sitting at the end of meditation. You're not going to consciously try and be mindful, but it might just continue. That's the wonderful thing about awareness. If you consciously try to cultivate it, then the momentum continues after you've sort of, as it were, finished. So like I said, I'll just stop talking for a couple of minutes and just let you kind of imagine yourself doing this mindful walk. Someone's asking, is walking towards a destination, i.e. a coffee place, okay? Or should it be better to just be a walk? Actually, like I say, if it's something that you're doing, to get somewhere, in a way that's better, you know, because it's something that you're already going to do. So ideally, it's a walk that you already do. So if you take a walk to a coffee place in the afternoon, typically, then that would be a really, really good thing to be aware of, is just be aware of your walk to the coffee place. So another question, do I pay attention to all around me, or am I paying attention to my body only? So I'd say just pay attention to your body only. Now, obviously, this is the difference between a mindful walk and walking meditation. If you're doing walking meditation, you can pay a much closer attention to your body. But if you're walking along a street, for example, obviously you need to pay attention to, like, you know, light lampposts and so on. So you need to have a kind of a more of a general awareness, but you're just paying attention to your body, paying attention. If you need a focus, you can focus on the touch of your feet against the ground. You'll be able to feel that through your shoes. And someone's asking, is it good focusing on the breath or just the physical things during the walk? It's probably easier just to focus on the physical things, because if you're walking down the street, it'd be quite difficult to focus on something as subtle as the breathing. So in a way, like when we do mindfulness of breathing, which we'll do in the coming weeks, we did a bit of it this morning, earlier today, you know, you're concentrating on the movement of your breathing. So when you're walking, in your way, your legs move in a kind of rhythm. So if you can just concentrate on not just the movement, but the kind of rhythm of your walking, you could become quite concentrated, quite engrossed in it, in the same way that you can become concentrated and engrossed in the movement of your breathing in your body. And you can also walk, you don't have to walk at a special pace, you can actually walk quite vigorously and quite mindfully at the same time. Cycling, someone's just asked, what about cycling? I'd walk if you can. If you do cycle, what you could do, let's say you cycle to work, you could cycle to like 5 or 10 minutes away from where you work, you know, lock up your bike and then walk the last 5 or 10 minutes. Partly with cycling, you've got to be so attentive to the road that it's difficult to be attentive to your body, you know, because if you're not constantly attentive, you can fall off or get a crash. So I wanted now to move on to the other item, the other practice item for this week, which is meditation. So last week I said that the meditation was optional, and this week in a way it's compulsory. Obviously it's up to you if you want to do it, but it's sort of integral to the course. So what you're doing when you meditate is you're spending a period of time only trying to be aware. It's your main focus is trying to be aware. And what happens is that overflows into the rest of your life. The more you meditate, the more you'll naturally be aware in the rest of the day. So it's like an intensive practice of awareness that you're doing each day. And again, it's going to be central to this course, this daily meditation. So if you've already got a meditation practice, I know some of you do, if you've already got a meditation practice, this is an opportunity to just sharpen it up a little bit. So you might like to, for example, begin by just doing a body scan, to making sure that you're really, really connected with where you are and what's going on before you enter into the practice. That could be something that you might like to take on. You might like to refresh your sense of regularity. So to say, this week I'm going to meditate at exactly 7 o'clock every day, not just when I feel like it. that you might challenge the amount of time that you spend meditating. So you might know yourself what it is that you need to do in order to deepen your meditation practice, and here's an opportunity to do that. If you don't meditate already, and this meditation is a new thing for you, what you can do is you can follow the video of the meditation that I just did. Most of you have probably got mobile phones. You can just click on the link, and just, if you want to, you can just follow the lead through that I did earlier as part of the class earlier. Daniel and I will get the video prepared for you, so you'll be able to see that tomorrow. Or you might like to sort of go, freestyle, as it were, and just literally what I did is I just started at the top and moved down through the body, paying attention to the different parts of the body, and then finished by paying attention to the breathing. One thing, again, I don't want to kind of labour this point, but it's really, really important to make a clear decision to do the walking meditation, and to make a clear decision to do the seated meditation. So not the walking meditation, the mindful walk. So the key thing is just to decide when you're going to do it. It's about 20 minutes, that meditation you did earlier. It might have been 15 minutes. So just decide like exactly when you're going to do it. And try and imagine yourself doing it in your house. So what will you need to put in place to make sure that you can do it? And it might mean talking to the people that you live with and just letting them know that you're going to be doing it, and asking them if they wouldn't mind just leaving you alone so you can get on with it. So what we're particularly focusing on this week is just getting into a routine, really establishing a strong routine for the practice. You might also like to think about where you're going to do it, like what part of the house, but the really challenging thing is when. It's like you need to carve out a particular time of the day when you're going to do it. So again, what I'll do is I'll just stop talking for a moment or two, and just give you an opportunity to imagine your way into this new practice that you're going to take on, this meditation practice. And if you've got any questions, by all means, feed them to me in the chat box. And I've just shared the screen of those two items for home practice this week.
Paul, I think he's going to do a meditation in a minute. Will I tell you when it's on?
I'm just too tired at the moment, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I'd love to. I will.
So hopefully you've all got a clear idea in your mind of where, and particularly when, you're going to meditate, yeah, for this week, this coming week. So what we'll do now with the time that we have left, we'll just do a short meditation. We'll do a short kind of 5-minute meditation, which is kind of like a miniature version of a body scan. So you might even try doing this one with your eyes open, just to see what that's like, particularly if you're a bit sleepy. Just leaving your eyes open letting your eyes rest on something that isn't very interesting, like the floor maybe, or a wall, or looking away from your computer screen. So often our attention is given to what we're looking at. So we're drawing our attention away from what we're looking at. We're drawing our attention away from what we're listening to and paying attention to what's happening by way of sensation in the body. Feeling the touch of our body on what we're sitting on. Aware of the position of our right leg and our left leg. The touch of our clothing against the skin of our legs. Our feet on the floor. Then being aware of our belly, the way that our belly moves as we breathe. And the chest, and the arms, and the hands. So not an idea about our body, but an experience of our body. So again, being aware of our arms and our hands, paying particular attention to the sensations in the hands. Notice the neck, the head, and the face. And then for the last minute or so, bringing your attention to your breathing. Paying attention to the way your body moves, particularly in the belly when you breathe, and allowing your mind to rest on those sensations, that movement. And then when you're ready, just bringing the meditation to a close. So I just got a question there just about the difference between walking meditation and mindful walking. Basically, the difference is if you're doing walking meditation, you're just walking to meditate. You usually just walk up and down or walk around in a circle. The main thing you're doing, or the only thing really you're doing, is you're trying to develop awareness. So you usually do it in a way that you don't have to worry about walking into anybody or avoiding cars or anything. So you can be much more focused. Mindful walking is where you're actually probably going to be walking through a city street, when you might live in the country if you're lucky, and you could probably be more concentrated. But whatever way, if you're going from point A to point B, you're going to need to be aware of your surroundings. So the awareness that you develop will be a bit more diffuse. Whereas with walking meditation, you can actually develop some quite intense concentration. Now, walking, I don't want to denigrate walking meditation. It's just it's difficult to do in a course like this. And part of what we're trying to do in a course like this is develop mindfulness about your kind of everyday activities. And it's a really, really good way of doing that is by paying attention to a walk that you already do. What we're going to do next week is we're going to pick up a mindful activity, which is picking up an activity that you already do. So hopefully that's clear. There's more in the book. Do read the book. There's loads of really good stuff in the book, tips about how to practice. Tune in next week. It'll be the same Zoom link and password. And if you've got more questions, I'll be here for another few minutes. So do feel free to hang around in the Zoom room, and I'll try and respond to your questions. Yeah, look forward to seeing you next week when we're going to be looking at mindfulness of feelings. Yeah, so that's it. Thanks for coming.